just to dispel the idea that we're going to come on here and totally disparage sugar. I love sugar. I'm going to, and my thought thinking about this was it, like wine, we know the old biblical story. Jesus didn't turn the water into milk. God bless him. It turned it into wine, not a necessity.
Right. Something of enjoyment, not a necessity. I hadn't thought about it like that.
Well, the story, they're at a wedding. Could you see him going, you know what? Everybody's had enough wine. I think we need some good, wholesome milk, or maybe a smoothie or just a carrot. He made a non-necessity, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for whoever figured coffee out. Not a necessity, but man, it is a pillar of my joy staple during the day. And sugar, I like. Not only do I like it, I do like it and I think we'll probably get into this, in excess, which is outside of its natural form and a natural food in a certain amount a day. And sometimes I like having it in excess in my ice cream, in a donut. God bless a donut. I appreciate that, but looking at it as a gift. So there's my intro to sugar, but looking at it, and it's the same thing. Do we need it? How much? What's the better form? So there's your intro, Dr. James.
There's the intro. Yeah. How do we think about it? And is this one kind of last? Did we save sugar?
I literally, I think the category is kind of last, and it's a goofy. When is anybody?
It is goofy. That's right. Because it is a carb. It is also in your almost every other food, right? It has some glucose in it. And yet we have to talk about it separately, because it is like we would talk about wine separately from liquid.
Gosh, we didn't make out. I guess we could make alcohol. I don't know. What do you say about it? It's not a necessity. Watch out, but we're not going to.
Yeah, we didn't make it a separate.
I don't know if we should.
Intoxicating things, right?
Yeah.
How much marijuana do you do?
Oh, Lordy, I have no idea how to talk about. I don't, but
Colorado.
Okay. Well, but gosh, maybe we should. The point of having.
Okay, here's why we can put that in the same sentence as wine and marijuana, is because of that question. What's the number one drug on the planet?
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Like, it is sugar.
We just watched, I had some of my older kids watch Dances with Wolves.
I
loved that movie when it came out. I still like it. So it was, hey, let's watch a good classic, which dates us to say that's a classic, but we watched it, and there's the consummate scene that's in too many Westerns of the cowboy, the white man, coming over to the Native Americans with sugar. And I remember that. So we just watched this scene. So he comes over and says, here's coffee. He gave him coffee, and he's showcasing his stuff he's excited about, gave him sugar. And the one dips his finger in it, puts it on his tongue and goes, he's like a caveman. He's telling his other ones do that. And they get their coffee cup, and he's like, put it in. He's like dumping, sugar in there. And there it was, so at some point we went from sugar that comes in its natural forms to somebody figured out what sugarcane, I guess,
sugarcane, sugar beets,
and how to extract it. So we could make a cake with sweet. 500 times the amount of sugar in a bite than anybody had ever experienced beforehand. Yeah.
That it's no wonder. And everybody, well, not everybody, but if you're a parent, you remember the first kid in their first bite of ice cream and the delight in the eyes. And it's so fun. It's such a gift.
We did not, our first,
you didn't,
our first biological kid, Caleb,
no wonder he's so weird.
No sugar, zero. I mean, we were militant. No sugar in any form. I mean, obviously he had breast milk, and then we made when he started having solid foods, we made it. So it was broccoli. It was raw. I don't know if I put salt in it, but it was raw thing. And then I remember the condo that we lived, our duplex that we lived in Franklin, Tennessee, and had him up on the thing and gave him, I don't remember what it was, but it was like a
lot of times it's first birthday party and cake and ice cream. And,
it was before that, I think, but,
okay.
But gave him the first bite, and I'll never forget, cause it was just put it on there, see what happens. And he goes, literally made a sound. We're like, I wish we had that on video. Yeah. Of that. And so there we were, the first person who figured out a sugar cane, I guess.
Well, there you go. Two examples of it's primal. Yeah. It's a gift. It's so enjoyable. I'm grateful for it. And therefore, once it is in your system, meaning in your family, in your sphere of awareness, you now have to manage it. Or like any other example of a drug, it'll manage you. And that's why we're talking about it like this, because we live in a culture where you and I would say, well, from our perspective, on the spectrum of everybody in America is overcarbed in general, is everybody on the oversugared side? Probably so. Right? Like it probably so that we are all imbibing in more sugar than we ought to use that moralistic kind of a word. But you can hear somebody else saying, well, so what? I mean, it's just a can of Coke. I mean, I grew up on a can of Coke a day.
And I know a guy who, just not doing any sugar for like a year or whatever. And I'm just thinking, it's just, I almost get that feeling of life's too short, man.
Well, I thought you said that this morning in our Friday guys group. It just irritates you because we have to manufacture this fake
abstaining
abstinence.
Yeah.
Right. Like with wine or sugar or or anything, because we don't have seasons that force it upon us. We don't have socioeconomics that force it upon us.
Yeah. We don't have lack in America.
We don't have lack in these areas. In almost every socioeconomic class, we don't have lack of sugar.
That's true. You talked to one of the last shows, we talked about the food islands where there's places, deserts, where people literally may not be able to get a hold of a fresh fruit or a fresh veggie or something like that.
That is limiting.
But I can't believe it exists with sugar.
And that's what equals those food deserts, is because it's fake food or fake water, theoretically, at the Quick Trip, gas station. You can fill your belly, but I should say it's nutrient deserts.
True. Yeah. Look at the food drive. What is it? The most nutrient deficient foods.
Right. Fill your belly, but
shelf life. Yeah. It's the stuff you would put in your bomb shelter. That's going to last like a Twinkie.
The logistics of a gas station. Like they can do it that way. The grocery store has the outer aisle.
Even the hot dogs in the thing, don't think that they're in there to keep them fresh. They'll stay on that roller for 100 days without molding. It's just to keep it hot and make it look good. So you'll buy it. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So how then to think about sugar? And I think, like we say so often, number one is be aware. So there it is. We're talking to ourselves. We're talking to people and saying, okay, be aware that we are likely oversugared. Be aware that without a doubt, if you look at it, there's plenty of studies that say the addictiveness of it is like unto cocaine. It is highly addictive.
Can I hit there? Because so we started off the show and I wanted to be gracious and say, hey, I love sugar. I'm not giving it up. Life's too short not to have it in some abundance sometimes, but going back to literally the story of Jesus at the wedding, first miracle that we're to understand was making wine. And so wine is so often, if you look in the appendix of your Bible, so much in there, and you think, why? Because we look at it and go, man, it is dangerous. I mean, look at alcoholism, and alcohol is probably the most, well, we'll get there, accepted drug. If you're going to take cocaine, if you're going to do even marijuana has, issues culturally, but wine, everybody, or alcohol, you can have that. And yet, man, talk about dangerous. And now here we have though sugar. So here's my I don't know. You tell me if it's exaggerated. Because people would think, man, gosh, if we could just abolish right now alcohol, how many people would that help? How many people would that free and help their health? And I'm going to say, I'm tempted to think we would do far more good in America if we abolish sugar.
Well, and we did do this.
What?
We had prohibition that abolished alcohol, the legal.
Well, theoretically.
Right. But it was a trial. It had impact. Some people who would have drank didn't drink. Was there an improvement in health? I don't even know the answer to that question. Was there less alcoholism during that time or whatever? But so we've referred often to Mark Hyman in the book, The Food Fix. Yeah. And I heard him, I don't know if there's actually in the book, he said it on an interview, and he's like, look, if we see the consequences of high carb, high sugar diet in our children, we are struggling with childhood obesity, childhood diabetes, childhood hyperlipidemia. We know it impacts test functions. We know it impacts capacity to be becoming the kind of young men and women to go into business, to do the military, to do this kind of stuff. If we could prove that a foreign country was doing to our children what we have done, we'd go to war like that. That's an act of war. So are we perpetrating war on ourselves? And I would say yes.
Oh, we know we are. We're committing mass suicide in a degree. I know that's harsh.
Slow suicide, mass chronic disease.
Well, yeah.
And it's a prime purveyor of the chronic diseases that we are stuck in.
If we look at kids, though, we look at kids, we think obesity, we just think physiologically, but
ADD, ADHD, mental health, fatigue, energy, just confusion, listlessness, the lethargy, and COVID, I think, didn't cause so much as it revealed in these areas of then when you put everybody alone in isolation and at home and online. And my gosh, I felt it too. It's like the snacks are right there. And if I'm not out doing, I'm much more likely to sit at home and consume. Anyway, we know this. And can you imagine, though, that there would ever be an abolishment of sugar? I mean, that our people would revolt.
It's not going to happen. And it's, since it doesn't cause inebriation, but just slow chronic illness and disease, right, we're not going to, and I don't have hopes for some.
Well, and at the same time, we don't want it to because it's joyful and it's a gift and it's fun. And there's a time and a place for cake and ice cream and donuts. And there's a time and a place for not. And here we are back again to that frustration.
And we're and it's the personal goals. Where do you want your weight? It obviously has a big thing to do with your weight, your physique, how you look, how you feel, aches and pains, inflammation, and then longevity. Because it was just I do want to pick on if it was just a life expectancy issue. And somebody said, Kevin, if you, at the rate that you're eating sugar and having wine and, cars, whatever, it's going to take 3 years off your life. 5 years off your life, 7. I wonder how many people would say,
right. What would okay? I'll die at 82 instead of 87.
What would I be? Okay. But then of course we know that that's not the bad thing. It's the health span.
30 years between 55 and 85.
Exactly. How long, Kevin, are you willing to lose mental and physical capacity? And as Dr. Randy James says, linger. Are you okay to have that start? I'm 50. A lot of people are kind of thinking, hey, it's around the corner. And then have that go till your life expectancy. We're going to keep you alive till you're 87. You're going to have 20 years of lacking capacity and lingering. No way, man.
Right.
That's convicting.
That's convicting.
And unknown, because we know our grandpa who all he ate was Hostess ding dongs and cigarettes. He actually ate them and he lived at 87. Sharpest attack.
He ran the gauntlet.
He ran the gauntlet. He was the exception. I am not currently planning to hope to be the exception.
Right. Is your retirement plan to win the lottery?
Yeah, exactly. I know somebody who was dirt poverty and then won the lottery, or somebody died and left them some money. So if you think that maybe you can go ahead and start planning your life around that and not do anything financially, or think you might not be the exception and do what best health practices are.
Right. To increase the chance. There's no guarantee. And so then people have to go out into this American world and make decisions. And it's a colossal pain in the rear. And so we come to that question of, okay, what do we do? You
right now are on.
I do want to bring that up.
Okay. How many weeks?
This is finishing week 6.
Is it fair to say it's not a no sugar diet, but you're not doing sugar because it's
correct. It's no. Okay. I did. So the big things on this ketogenic trial of 90 days, at which I'm halfway through, I guess, is eliminating carbs in general. And for me, that included fruit. So I just, rather than figure out which fruits I could do or this or that, I thought, you know what, rice, corn, legumes, all of those kind of things in the traditional carbs. And I also stopped fruit, stopped wine, And the one thing that I have continued to do is like that. I just swallowed some goat milk kefir. Well, there's whatever it is in goat milk, but lactose, right? So there's some carb in those kind of things. And probably still most nights have dark chocolate, 88% chocolate love. And if I do 3 squares of that, I'm feeling fairly content with it.
Staying in ketosis.
Staying in ketosis.
Yeah.
And clearly felt better. And I have to confess, I broke it one night. And I was wondering, gosh, is this going to be a downward slide or am I going to get back into it? And it was one of those serendipitous things. It's exactly what I would say about cake and ice cream. And I chose not to feel guilty about it or feel bad. And it's because something happened. And these nights where one kid is spending the night somewhere, another kid happens to go over there, and all of a sudden we're kidless. And we're like, well,
took all your clothes off and ate sugar.
Yeah. Awesome. Except for the fact that we were in our car in downtown and we're like, we could eat wherever we want.
Okay.
And we went to Edelweiss.
Yeah.
Which, for me growing up in Germany and all that kind of stuff was just wonderful memory lane. So had a German
Did you have
beer.
a beer? I was going to say, yeah.
And the vegetable that came out was red cabbage. And I thought, oh, great. And I took a bite and I'm like, oh, they sweetened it.
Oh.
So it was super sweet cabbage. I did not appreciate the sweetness. Like it, and had a bite of something else and noticed that my sweet palate had changed. And also noticed that in the past, 88% felt dark and it feels sweeter. And I appreciate that. And also appreciated the fact waking up the next morning and feeling tension and puffiness in my joints again and feeling
the blessing of pain.
Am I going to be a forever no carb person?
But there's the thing though, you can get back into more sugars and carbs and you may even get past that achy feeling or get used to it. Who knows?
And can I re-engage? And what my plan would be, and this will pertain to dessert too, is fast on most Mondays and keep Tuesday and Wednesday ketogenic. And so therefore 3 days out of the week be in ketosis. Like that's a rhythm I can do. And then on Thursday, like our family really loves these rice bowls. Like last night, again, I had cauliflower rice, but everybody else had rice and we put some shrimp and avocados and whatever. And then enjoy that on 4 days of the week. And so that's what I anticipate. But part of this 12 weeks was no classical desserts. I mean, dark chocolate's the only thing I'm doing.
Well, but it's fair to say no excess sugar in the economy of whenever.
And no added sugar at all. Like I haven't
added sugar. Okay.
Well, I haven't had any fruit and I haven't had any sweet things other than whatever 88% dark chocolate is.
Okay. And I didn't do this, but we can go with the concept. I guess we could go back and say, when was sugar, I don't know if we could say discovered, but when was it used as an extract? Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, there's always been honey. So that extract of sugar has been around forever since honey.
But not everybody had access to it, depending on where you were, depending on who you were, where you were, you didn't have access to fruit and whatnot. So at some point we figured out, so honey, and then we figured out sugarcane. But if we go back to the primary span of time, the majority span of time, the average person is having, again,
well, even the extract, because you had it was late 1600s, early 1700s, the sugar plantation, sugar cane, and those kind of things started going to where, and then tea in Britain. So that was the first industrial revolution, and then they put sugar in the tea. That's the beginning of sugar. So late 1600s, early 1700s, and it began. And now we've got sugar, and it's getting cheaper, more refined, higher processed. So then let's go to the 1800s, where most of us can kind of have a concept of what that life is like in America. 1850, you go to the local country store and you buy a pound of sugar, but that is now going to last you for weeks.
It's a fairly small ingredient in whatever, your tea, your cookies, a cake that you do once every quarter for somebody's birthday.
That's right. And then that lasted until 1950.
Well, we read Little House on the Prairie, some of that last year. And Paul would go to the store, go 2 days away to a store and get, I can't remember all the things. I know one of them was sugar and nails. For him, nails was a big thing.
Well, and Poldark, you read that.
Yeah.
They had some of those kind of things in there where, they had scurvy on land because they just didn't have oranges or lemons or anything. So there was that limitation in the common people But pretty soon people had more access to sugar than they did oranges. Even those people.
Oh,
Like
true.
they had scurvy, but
Well, and I real quick wanted to go even before that. So I don't know when we do 1600s, 1500s. Wait, again, the greatest span of time that depending on where somebody lived,
okay.
the average day, fruit, nuts, seeds, meat,
Tubers,
vegetables.
Yeah.
And if they had access to fruit, that was the sweet
In
thing,
season.
which is why we even have grandparents these days or parents that remember the specialness of getting that orange in their stocking at Christmas, which is, if we gave that to our kids today, it'd be like a lump of
You
coal.
took up all this space.
No, it'd be
It's a lump of
comparable to, I got a lump of coal. I was the worst kid ever. This year, apparently Santa left me a lump of coal in the form of an orange because I want the 15-pound Milky Way or, whatever we do. So, but if we go back to that, where somebody maybe had access to fruit and whatnot, you're right now having possibly even less than they did as for sugar. You're really cutting it out. If we
maybe, right?
maybe,
or even having kind of what they did have.
Maybe what they did have.
That's what I would suggest is probably more like what they did have.
So we got to a point though of the additives. So here we are. I mean, if we bring it up then to today of going, okay, should we all be on Dr. James, a completely no sugar diet? How much is going to, yeah, I know. Cause you want to know where to push the envelope. So man, how much
every day, Kevin, because every day in my kids, like, it's so funny. Like the 10-year-old says, for whatever reason, he's reading the back of his can of Zevia. Do you know those?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, look, Dad, 0 sugar.
Yeah.
0, Dad. It's healthy.
Uh-huh.
Like, first of all, I laugh, and he keeps going, 0 carbs, 0 this. And I'm like, then why are you drinking it? And he's like, because it tastes
good. Now it's got stevia in it, which is the bump up from, let's go back to when they figured out diet sodas and they had, what are they? Aspartame. What was the
sucralose?
Yeah.
So it's and you go to the restaurant, you have the pink pack, yellow pack, blue pack, right? And aspartame, sucralose, and I forgot the other, saccharin maybe.
But I think Diet Cokes today, I think aspartame is still primary.
I think it is. And I used to be very anti-aspartame, but do you know that aspartame is one of the most tested, studied compounds in humans in history? I mean, they have looked for it. Now, I also believe a patient that says, oh my gosh, aspartame gives me a headache. Don't do it. Because there's some human out there that almost anything will give anybody anything. And
well, my question was, and maybe you know the answer or have an opinion, I'm sure, is if I have 2 Cokes, I mean, you'd be best off, don't have them. If you're going to, are you better off with the Coke with 8 tablespoons of sugar, whatever it has, gigantic, 47 or 70 grams, whatever it is of sugar, or the one that has none, but it's aspartame, which, I'm to understand it does create some triggers in the body that can lead to weight gain. Who knows what the chemicals are doing long-term? I don't know if you've studied the studies.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
and so in this space, I would say, because at the end of the day, we're going to come down with, okay, I'm going to have something. Is it better to have A or B?
And that's part of the point here.
That's right.
Very few people, including me, are going to leave this show and go, none, 0, not going to do any sugar. I'm not going to do any artificial sweetener. I'm done with sweets. I'm just not gonna. I'm going to try to figure out to the best of my abilities where I feel that where I put my faith in regards to what the long-term effects are going to be.
Yeah. That's a great summary.
I don't have to, I'm not suffering so much from immediate issues like overweightness. That's going to be the main one that people think of. If people feel like they're suffering from inflammation, aches and pains, I mean, sugar is huge. Now I'm also not doing that much sugar. My average day, like yours, well, before your keto thing, is nothing in the morning. If we do tea and coffee, but we don't do sugar, you've never done sugar. So we get to lunch. It's usually fresh food from the night before. So today I had veggies. I had veggies. I did some dippy stuff, but veggies and guac and whatever. So not really sugar. I actually have not had my dark chocolate. I went right into this show but I will. As soon as we finish this, I'm going to have some plain yogurt and I'm going to dump in there some nuts I have. Some of them are maybe some dark chocolate chips or something like that. Go home tonight. We'll have another, again, another whole meal of, it may have some rice or some veggies or some shrimp or whatever like that. That's kind of average. And then afterwards, I'm going to have something sweet. At the least, dark chocolate covered almonds is my go-to.
You say you're going to because it's Friday night?
No, I'm just going to always.
Oh, most nights.
Yeah, most nights. I'm going to fulfill that addiction I've fed or craving or habit and have that. And so if you look at the amount of sugar, the grams, it's pretty low comparably. That's not the norm. So that's at the low point. So I'll say, I guess I'm obviously at the lower point America wise, but then how?
On the flip side, on the high point, people wake up and they have orange juice with a Lego My Eggo or a Pop-Tart on the way to work, or a coffee with sugar with sweet cream or some odd kind of creamer that has the stuff in it. And then it just never stops.
Well, and so for this audience, obviously, if you dip your spoon into sugar and put it into something, or you're having fruit juice or whatever, hopefully you're aware of that. Hopefully, if you're having anything that's in a non-natural form, which juice is not a natural form.
And we talked about that one. Yeah.
But anything if it comes in a box, a bag, a package in any way, if it's in the inner sanctum of the grocery store, you should be looking on the back and see. Doesn't mean it's healthy if it's zero, but
be aware.
That's a place to start, which is not a factor for you and I, because we just don't have prepackaged stuff.
I was never aware until this carb counting, phase of these few weeks. That's not fair. I was aware, and we just don't do sodas or juice or those. That's where you and I have drawn the line so that we can have that dark chocolate almond after dinner.
Well, but now, okay, go to the weekends or whatever. I mean, normally you're consistent with ice cream.
I would most often, like you, have a sweet something after dinner, and it's usually.
And if you're doing ice cream, we still doing Breyer's vanilla, the natural vanilla. It's got 5 ingredients.
Yeah.
It's got a decent sugar content, I assume, probably lower than the others, but I'm sure it's high.
Pretty high on the carb content. Breyer's makes a sugar-free.
Well, but then it's probably a chemical.
It's aspartame and all of those kind of things. But just like Coke, Diet Coke, in the past, I would have said Coke. Like there's the Hanson's organic soda, right? Or whatever, that theoretically organic cane sugar and organic resources, but it's still 40 to 50 grams of carbs of cane sugar.
I was going to say, man, as soon as this, because not that we have to get super clinical in this, but that amount of concentrated sugar goes in your mouth, the insulin response, it jacks your body. I mean, it is in no way, shape, or form a good thing. We don't have the studies of saying, we've got them on not on alcohol, on wine. Is red wine? I mean, they try to debate whether maybe it's actually good for you. Maybe coffee is actually. I haven't seen one that actually says maybe 10 tablespoons of raw cane sugar or processed is good.
Mainlined into your system is good for you. I would say, well, maybe if you're on the brink of starving to death, right? Coming out of the desert, or you need if you need to run away from the bear, like you never say never. Like, that one PhD patient we have from South Africa who's really into physiology.
Yeah.
So when you go to South Africa and if you go run an event, you'll see elite runners drink a Coke before the race.
Oh,
because it's cane sugar. It's not high fructose corn syrup. It's straight up cane sugar, because in Europe and whatever else, it's just cane sugar.
And is that really better? I mean, that much?
It's sugar. It's gluten. You're getting ready to spend it right now.
Okay.
So those physiologic mechanisms, that might be, now, is that true for 80 years of that runner's life, or does it get shaved 1 second off for those kind of things?
Well, okay, because you're not saying it's healthy. You're saying it's maybe for performance.
That's right.
I can take steroids for performance.
True. Okay. But back over here for health, would we ever say it's good? No.
Even if you were in Africa, I mean, we had the Ethiopian elite runners at our house, and they talked about literally running down a deer or, whatever type thing, running that down. And so if they need to chug a Coke to go run down dinner, it's for an end result.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say the opposite. It may not be, the Coke in itself is not healthy. It's a performance.
Yeah. But in that case, they get the deer. Otherwise they all starve to death.
Okay. But in and of itself, the Coke is not healthy. That's what
I would agree. But you and I have talked about this in the past too, sometimes it's dramatically unhealthy to deprive.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's back to your thing of that cake at the birthday every quarter or something. You said righteous word when we first met. That's a righteous cake. The problem is that we have it in some different form.
That's the problem.
Yeah. Which give in and of myself, if it were not for the aesthetics that I care about myself, I don't want to be overweight. And performance, I want to perform, in my biking and whatever, and my brain, all these things that I want. It was just, I would eat. I would have a donut. Myself.
If all I needed to do is sit there and eat,
I would have absolutely 2 donuts every morning with my coffee. I like my coffee black. I would have 2 donuts for lunch. I would have breads and, stuff like that. And I'd have a sweet, I don't know, piece of pie. And at night I'd have as much as I could fit in without yakking. Pie, ice cream, cake. I love it. I used to say, I don't have a sweet tooth, man. I have a sweet belly. I have a pit. And I did, man. As a pro cyclist, I pounded sugar. I don't do it now because I think it does bother me. I get bad, like that candida breath, and that my wife can smell a mile away. And it just, man, I think it probably the reasons of stuff that I've got going on now.
For sure. That has played a role.
Yeah.
And therein lies the question always. Okay, here it is. It's a gift. It's wonderful. Part of the problem, I think, in America too, is whatever conclusion we come to on this show, somebody's going to say, oh, I'm way better than you guys. And other people are going to be, you guys are freaks. Like that's way too restrictive. And other people are going to be like, oh, I'm disappointed that you said that cake on your birthday is okay.
So this being, as you said, in one of the one of the most addictive drugs we have.
Yes.
Let's do as you do with patients and tread softly and say, wherever you are, if you hear this show and think, holy smokes, I'm doing so much, I need to stop it. What I've heard you do with patients is do what's sustainable. If you cut it out totally, chances of you
sustainable.
Yeah.
Right. You do what you can rationally, realistically envision yourself doing and even looking forward to in the future. We talk about that all the time, Kevin. What can you look forward to? Because if we said even the way life happened with you and you're like, you know what, I'm not going to do that ketogenic thing with you because it's not the right time. It would just be really crushing to my soul, my spirit, whatever. And now that I'm in the middle of it, I have a looking forwardness to an evolution of the next phase of a different evolving relationship to these foods.
Yeah.
And there again, I think most people are not thinking that way. They're like, I just grab something and go. I just eat. Right. And that's in my own house and my own son. And I'd be like, so last Friday, I'm like, hey, steak night, we're going to have grass-fed, grass-finished, whatever else. And I even asked Marcia, I'm like, the kids don't sometimes eat so much. For our family, should we do 3? Because they're expensive, and what about 2? And 2's a little too much and 3's a little much. So then I get the text, hey, can you pick me up? And so I thawed this extra steak because Ryder, they've decided they like it and whatever else. And I get the kids, Ryder and his friend in the car, and they got bags of McDonald's. And I'm like, I thawed a steak for you, and you have filled your belly with that. And now the smell is in my car. It was the first thing I said. And
you just wowed a lot of people that Dr. James' son ate it
at McDonald's. Right over there. So half the time he's like, can you just pick me up at McDonald's? I'm like, okay.
I succeeded. I totally beat you. I brainwashed my kids. They will not go there because
what's the story of
they were little and they went to the one over here that we're pointing at, and they were in the tube playground thing. Cause we used to go there and get like French fries. We were vegetarian. We had French fries and let them play in the play thing when they were little. And there was a diaper in there with poop in it. Like some kid had fallen out of its diaper and there's poop in it. And that's bad enough. One of my kids got sick. Was it from that? Was it from the food? I don't know, but they put that in conjunction and a couple of the kids puked, got sick later on and puked. And then they got it confused with McDonald's and the old McDonald's song. And one of them referred to said, I don't want to go there again. Where the old McDonald's where you puke. That's what they call it. So that's what McDonald's is to my kids. So they've all been brainwashed. Even the older ones don't go. Now they may go to, they'll go to Taco Bell, probably not any better. But old McDonald's where you puke. Okay. Dr. James' kid ate at McDonald's.
So they're in, is that, he thought I was crazy. And I'm sure his friend thought I was crazier.
Yeah.
Like, why am I pounding on them for, McDonald's? He's like, it's just a cheeseburger. I'm like, okay. And so we're back to our choices, because our culture, especially with sugar, way more than even McDonald's. I mean, sugar is just, you have to work to get away from it.
Yeah. You're going to be the person, if you work with other folks, that says, oh, there's the plate of donuts, the plate of, you weren't here. A couple of days ago, a lady came by, I don't know, some medical equipment, whatever. I said, they're not here, whatever. And she says, well, heck, I don't have anything to do with this. Gave me a box of these gourmet cookies. Yeah, that you would have thrown away. I gave them to my older boys. They're really, I did taste well. They were really good. But yeah, you have to be the guy who says, no, I'm not going to do that. And
right. And now you're like, you're on a diet or whatever.
Social pariah.
So yes. And so the here's what I would tell a patient, like, think of sugar. So here's the bottom line awareness from now on and forevermore. If people hearing this could think about it in the same way that, because we do use, okay, you use cocaine in the OR. We don't really use it in our practice, but marijuana, we use medicines all the time. One guy just got out of surgery and I wrote a script for morphine. And I would, but it's very dangerous. Like, this is addictive. And he's like, no, I'm not going to get addicted. And I'm like, it's because that right there. People say, I'd really rather not take that. Why? Well, I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to feel weird. Why don't we think that way about sugar? So here's what I would say is treat it like a knife. Can a knife, is it a good to sit down to a steak dinner with a knife? Can it really help you cut your steak? Do you need a knife in your toolbox? Can it kill you? Can you poke your eye out? Can you slice your, can you do all kinds of damage with that knife? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Treat sugar like a snake, like a knife, like something that's got fangs. But if you just willy-nilly toss it around everywhere and let your 3-year-old play with a knife.
Yeah.
And that's what I think we're doing is at 30, we're acting like 3-year-olds. At the bottom line, it's like, get off my back. It's just a donut. It's just a Pop-Tart. It's just a whatever. I'm like, yeah, I'm calling people out to a maturity, a wisdom, to treat sugar like treat it like sex. Sex is wonderful. It's good, but you don't share it with everybody.
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking about alcohol, and we point at that. We're so acutely aware because if you and I sit there and imbibe and have a glass of wine, not going to be a big deal. 2 glasses. Well, even there, especially if you haven't eaten much, the right foods, 2 glasses, depending on, if you're up here at altitude, you might be impaired to drive. That's a literal danger to people. You get a DUI, whatever. If we treated sugar like that, the bummer is that there's not an immediate consequence like there is of wine. The consequence is next week with the weight gain, or next month with the achy inflammation in your knees.
Or even worse, next 40 years.
Well, okay. Yeah, exactly. It's there. And if we did treat it, I wish we could, manufacture a quick response like this sugar that goes in, the insulin hits, and boom, man, you can't stand up.
You feel, you feel the pain, right? Like, and here we are asking for pain for, I wish I had a line that when I had one more extra bite of whatever, that my body felt it.
We need a breathalyzer for desserts. So you're sitting there at Thanksgiving dinner and you're on that second piece of pie. I go, Randy, breathe into this. Dude, you are drunk.
Wasted.
You're wasted. Yeah. That would be great. Like a glucose monitor. I guess that is.
Well, that's right. So you can now wear a continuous glucose monitor, prick your finger and know, okay, I ate XYZ, and just watch it go up in the next hour or 2. And ultimately, and this is on the metabolic side, I think we talked about this in the carbohydrate, where we talk about insulin, glucose, and the body's response to that. It is inflammatory. It is a boxing match because the amount of glucose that your body wants to have floating around. We did talk about this. And remember, so how much glucose in your blood right now? About 6 liters of blood. How much glucose? 1 tablespoon. Spread throughout 6 liters. That's how much your brain needs to think and be conscious, and your muscles to do what you do right now. And once it's a very tightly regulated area. And once it gets out of that tightness, and we call it diabetes or hypoglycemia on the other side. So there's that window of where and most people will keep it tight like that, even if they pound a gallon of ice cream every day for decades. But you're wailing on the system, and there is metabolic pain. You just don't get to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. And you could, well, why not? Why don't we feel that pain? And I would say, I don't know. If the evolution people would say, well, look, for a long, long time, you didn't have any sugar at all. And now for the last mere 3 generations, there's over sugar. There's not been time enough to change.
Well, it makes
even
me
micro evolution.
Yeah, it makes me evolution. It makes me think of it was on the Ziegler show, episode like 934, something like that. And we talked about termites, that sugar, if we think about it in that, every time I'm doing it, it's theoretically a termite in my system, eating away somewhere, causing corrosion somewhere. When I think about corrosion and rust, we never see it happen. It's just until 10 years later, it's kind of, holy crap, there's rust there, and it's brittle,
and the pipe breaks,
and the pipe breaks.
That's what you feel in the body, is the system breaks.
Hey, let me ask you this, because we're talking about, we should have put this earlier, it feels like, but we know, like you said, you're not doing fruits because that is sugar. It's a high sugar content. It's a better form of sugar. We can put that up there because you're getting the fiber and whatever, different than fruit juice. Don't do fruit juice. So have it in a, good whole piece of fruit. But that is a form of sugar. We know all the extracted sugar and desserts and things like that. But what about the things that we don't, that miss the sugar label for us, that our body turns into sugars?
Well, rice.
Okay. That's what I'm at.
So like white rice is about as sugary as white sugar.
Really?
White bread is.
So if we go have sushi, and I'm going to get rolls with rice, so it'll soak up all my sauces. If I have 2 rolls, it's probably, I don't know, two at least. 2 rolls, at least a cup of.
It's 100 grams.
And then I had
That's 2 Cokes.
And then later on that night, I think, man, I haven't had sugar all day.
That is what people think. And
I afraid that I tend to. I think I didn't have a dessert. I didn't have something sweet.
But in most of what people fill their belly with is rice, corn, wheat, soy, beans, which are sugars, maybe less, or maybe wrapped up with more fibers that slow down the absorption rate. Because at the end of the day, and here's why the Coke would be worse than the white rice, is because that spike of how fast the glucose goes into your bloodstream.
We said mainstream, or
you mainline
it. Yeah.
Like IV it right in. So you spike high, and then how long do you stay above a threshold? So how high does it spike, and how long is that curve up underneath that threshold? And so things like Coke, straight line sugar, high peak, and it tends to prolong. Therefore, now it's cumulative. So like kids all the time, they drink these Fantas and they drink these whatevers, and they don't get fat immediately or any of those immediate consequences. You can do that for decades. But the accumulative effect, and now here's where everybody's different. In one person, 10 years of being up there, and they're struggling with inflammation and weight and whatever in their 20s, et cetera. And then when we come over here to what we care about for longevity, which is heart attack, stroke, cancer, diabetes, and dementia, and also autoimmune are the top 5, 6. That's the cumulative effect of these spikes. I'm going to submit that sugar is the driving force.
Well, and there are studies for that. If you go to different socioeconomic demographics in America, in the world, and I know that from the Native American tribes that we're involved with, and you see significant increases dietarily of more sugar, and they can track. So you can go look at that. You can go look at all the list that you just gave out amongst Native Americans, and they're higher. They're unfortunately higher amongst African Americans in America, at least. And so we can see the demographics and the dietary lifestyle trends, right?
Yeah.
And
The
see
mega
increase.
trends.
Yeah.
That's blue zones. That's
Right.
and there's so many factors, the food deserts, the socioeconomic, the way that people eat, what is considered loving and gifting
Yeah.
and caring in families.
Yeah. And I just wanted to point out too, because you said something about what you just said a second ago. One person's propensity for deterioration next to somebody else's. When we look at, as I was just talking about, like Native Americans, their sensitivity is so much higher.
Sure.
And so I think that's why, to single out, because it feels unpolitically correct, but it's just stats, African Americans as well. It's not maybe because they're how they're living today, but it's because of what happens socioeconomically.
Metabolic sensitivity is much higher. They
built
that's right. Those who, and to quote Gary Taubes, you can't use this word anymore either, but those who simply fatten easily.
Yeah.
You and I aren't in that category. Me, probably less than you.
Apparently. Jerk.
Right. Like, well, that's not fair.
Yeah.
And it's genetic. It's a whole lot of complexity built in there. And then on one hand, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Right. Like you're either a dark skinned person, you don't have to worry about the sun, or a light skinned person. You got to wear a hat. And
Yeah.
you would never look at somebody and say, well, you jerk, I have to wear a hat and you don't.
Yeah.
So culturally, that is just where we are. So I would treat it like a gift that's a knife. So then make a decision like you do a knife. You say, I'm going to put it in the knife block in the kitchen. I'm going to put it in my toolbox. It never goes on your coffee table.
And it is a treat. That is, for folks here, that's one of the ways we've helped monitor it. It gets harder with the kids older, but with our younger kids, for the most part, sweets are on S days, Saturday and Sunday. The other days, it's just not. And then you get into cultural stuff and parenting stuff and yada. I know it's a big mess, but we're talking about true life and whatever your goals are.
We have, every family's going to have rules on all these things, and we should.
Yeah.
And it should be different. And so then the question is, okay, like Diet Coke, and what are you going to choose? And
did you resolve that?
I currently, the only time I have Coke is probably 3 times a year we would go out to a movie, and I would choose Diet Coke.
Yeah.
I prefer the taste. Would I choose it for the sugar?
Well, you're not saying health wise. I'm asking health wise, because I do too, because the regular Coke, I literally just can't handle it. It's just too syrupy sweet.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I like the bitterness of the other.
Yeah.
So that's a taste preference. That's not a health preference.
Right.
If you're going to be, hey, I'm going to drink a Coke a day. I enjoy the caffeine. It's my vice. It's what I'm going to do. I used to lean towards Coke, and now I probably lean towards Diet Coke, if somebody's not aspartame sensitive. And the debate has raged.
Well, but you're still saying it's a vice.
It's not for health.
You're doing it because that's my addiction.
The less bad. Now we're choosing what might be less bad.
I would rather you were addicted for your caffeine to tea or coffee.
True. If you needed to wake up, I'd go with green tea.
Well, right, as another vice for the fact that you shouldn't need it to wake up.
True. But if you like the flavor and all that,
saying that, okay, everybody hear that as two guys who never go without it
every day.
Exactly.
Now,
to wake up.
That's right. Because I know if I don't have coffee, I'm
fine.
Yeah. At least to this point. And so I enjoy the coffee, but I enjoy tea too, and that's been great in terms of staying hydrated.
Is your tea all caffeinated?
The green. Right. So think of coffee.
Like what you just had, or what you have right now.
That's herbal.
Oh.
So think of coffee as 200 milligrams about of caffeine, and a cup of green tea would be about 150.
Oh.
And then, or black tea would be about the same as coffee. Green tea about 150.
Gosh, we should do. Maybe there is another show. Alcohol, caffeine. No, what do you call it?
Drugs.
Yeah. Alcohol, caffeine. Is that fair? Marijuana.
Yeah. How do we?
I don't know.
I don't.
You folks can tell us.
Right.
Email me. What is
one person asked the question?
Yeah, it's you can go to my website, kevinmiller.co, and there's a contact form. Literally, if you maybe I'll put it online and ask
that question on
if
the
that's
Facebook.
relevant. I don't know if there's not enough usage of
Do
it.
people even wonder that?
I don't know. Or do they just know?
Well,
You get the
like, I don't have too many people asking me, what do you think about marijuana? Should I, shouldn't I, whatever. They've already made their decision, right? Like, they've already made their decision on meth and cocaine. Like you said, if you're going to sit there and have anything you want and have 2 donuts, I would really like to try cocaine.
Really?
Well, why not? I mean, it's supposed to make you feel euphoric.
I just like the taste of alcohol so much. I just go, I guess so. I've never tried it.
Well,
maybe we should
what's
do
the
it.
difference, right? Like, if
we could do a live show after taking
like Tim Ferriss, we can experiment on ourselves, videotape mushrooms and marijuana. Well, yeah, if there wasn't a consequence, the only reason we talk about
an immediate consequence.
Yeah, that's because there's a legal consequence.
Because we can sit here and have donuts, and it's just that the consequence doesn't show up for a while,
and it's perfectly legal.
Yeah, as is alcohol.
That's right. As is marijuana.
Okay, maybe.
Right. So if I'm going to have dessert now, is there a healthy way to have dessert? And then we're back to righteous cake and ice cream. That there's, like, when I break this ketogenic fast, it's going to be the week of Thanksgiving, and I'm going to have pumpkin pie. Mm-hmm. Now it's going to be interesting to see, because I'm going to have a reaction to that. I'm going to check my blood and all those kind of things. So it's a little bit experimental.
Yeah, I wonder if you'll get kind of gagged out quicker, max out quicker. I would assume.
Well, when I did this German restaurant, I did.
Yeah.
It's like fuller, faster, felt off, didn't feel appreciative as much as I would have. So I'm really working on trying to curb the amount I eat at a time.
Yeah.
But like I said before, the taste, the sweetness has shifted. And so now the darker chocolate feels more desserty. So from now on and forevermore, theoretically, I can be super satisfied with 88%.
Yeah.
And I have no desire to go. It's kind of like you and sweet coffee. It's like, what's the point?
Well, and we didn't talk about that. I guess hopefully people have heard it, but talking about upgrading your appetites.
Yeah.
Like I did have a time when I had sugar and coffee when I first started drinking it. And then I did a sugar fast. And then after that, I didn't even want it. I didn't like the taste, us evolving from, dark chocolate. I mean, what did I used to have? Milk chocolate. That's what's in America. You have milk chocolate, dark chocolate. That's, bitter and whatever. And now I literally don't like the taste of milk chocolate.
No, I won't eat it. I can leave, just like McDonald's.
Yeah.
I can walk away.
Like a saltine cracker. I have no need for that in my life. So, the idea of elevating your appetites, elevating your vices. We're obviously not here saying don't have any vices, but can you elevate them even from I would say to some degree, I think, is it fair to say like a beer, if you're gonna do alcohol, beer is going to have more negative consequences than a glass of wine. Carbohydrate wise, is that fair?
Carbohydrate wise, sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, but we can look at all these things and go, how can you?
Then we would say, Kevin, you need to keep upgrading and do vodka. Along those lines, there's
calories wise and stuff. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Go to 200 proof something, and then you only need a thimble and you're done.
See, the Russians figured this out. Vodka. Well, but with everything, if you're looking at if you're going to have the sugar, like you said, if you're going to have the Coke, if you're going to have the sugar, which we're both saying to some degree, normally you're not right now, but normally we're going to, can you do less? Can you do it in a lesser sweet form where, if I have milk chocolate almonds or just milk chocolate, dark chocolate, it's half the sugar grams. So I don't know.
Well, so last night we watched a movie and dessert is always really troublesome for ketogenic. So I have my, 3 little inch squares of 88%, whatever, and you want a little something more. And so last night, I didn't know this, but Marcy had given herself and Ryder a keto cup, which is a Reese's cup, but it's a ketogenic. It's, keto, anything these days is still very high carb. Yeah. Right? It's very hard to be keto if you go to
$100 a pop.
And it's $100 a pop. But Ryder's like, yeah, I'm not, he gave it to me. I'm like, oh, thank you. And he's like, that is not good. And Marcy gave it to me too. I don't know if she thought it was not good or she was full, but I was like, oh, extra. And I stayed in by this morning. So, I'm now tempted by 3 squares and a keto cup. Yeah. But no kidding, those keto cups are $1 a piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For some reason on that, when I've done no sugar whatever, the best natural, or no, I get it, natural grocers where it's just literally peanuts pressed through the thing. It fulfills that a little bit,
Oh,
fulfills
like
that sweet
nut butter?
sugar. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
peanuts are quite sugar laden.
Are they?
Yeah. Compared to almond butter. Okay.
Okay.
And,
Well, again, if we're talking about better forms though, it's going to be less sugar grams than
then the
a
Reese's
candy
peanut
bar.
butter
Yeah.
cup.
Then a Reese's.
Yes.
Exactly.
To
Exactly.
be sure. Oh, and I would never eat a Reese's peanut butter cup, but I love taking my 88% with my almond butter.
Oh yeah. That is key.
That's
So
a good one.
thank God. What a blessing that you've elevated appetite. So yeah, again, back to that thing of, as people hear this and you're thinking about your decisions, be careful of what's sustainable. We're talking about an addictive thing. And if you're whatever amount you're doing, if you cut it too much, maybe you
You're
can
gonna
do it
feel deprived.
if you can,
Yeah.
more power to you. But if you need to step it down, if you need to upgrade it,
I think it starts with your awareness.
Yeah.
And then I would also, and we did this on the carb show, I would argue everybody ought to try to get into 90 days of ketosis. It will change your taste buds. It will change the way you think. It will change your perspective. And then from your new perspective, keep your tools sharp, keep them in the toolbox, bring them out when it's time. And I'm anticipating Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday being ketosis and having ice cream once a week.
Yeah. Well, we back to that, the book or whatever, we crave what we consume. The more sugar you do, the more you'll crave.
Now, say that again. We've said that a couple times, but people don't believe that. I struggle with it because here I am 6 weeks in, and at 6 o'clock at night, I still crave a glass of wine.
Oh yeah.
I'm 6 weeks in of not. Do I have to go 6 months, 6 years, 60 years? Maybe. I don't know. But I didn't crave it when I was 16 because I did never have it.
Yeah.
So how did I become, or 26 or 36? It's you that led my.
Well, you're saying crave. I did 90 days not long ago of hardly any alcohol. And I got to the point where it wasn't a craving, but the thought would occur just habitually. I'm doing dinner. The thought would be there. And there were a handful of times when dinner was disrupted and I realized the next day or whenever I thought about next that.
Oh, I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
I thought about that the other day because I was like, I was done preparing dinner. We were getting ready to sit down and I thought about it and I was like, oh, darn, I almost made it a whole day.
Oh, it's
right.
Like the thinking game the kids have. And if you think about it, you lost the game. Do your kids not do that? My kids do this. That's the game, is if you think about it, you lose the game. So you'll have one of them going, oh man, I thought about it. I lost the game. There you go. Thinking alcohol game or thinking addiction game or thinking, addiction is going to be hard, habitual.
But go to the extreme of the guy addicted to alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
And you cannot tell the alcoholic there's going to come a day when you won't think about this. That's not true.
That's true. And I can go a year without a donut and then to pop it and a thought will occur and I'm craving something that I haven't consumed in a long time. Obviously I did enough to create that neural pathway.
That's what I'm saying. And I would also, when it comes to this, we're not talking about alcoholism and addiction and it's going to kill your life and all of this. We're saying sugar is this unique kind of that's why we're having a whole show on it, to say it's a gift. It's sweet. It's awesome. It can be a slow death, a slow linger. So it doesn't mean to go totally without. You do tend to consume or crave what you consume habitually. So get the awareness in your head. Think about this. Talk with your family or yourself. Make a decision and then live accordingly.